Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL round 14 betting review. Here we're going to look at all games from round 14. We're going to break them down, what happened in the betting, who covered the spread, did the games go over under the total. We're also going to go through some of the betting trends and also look at the statistics that contributed to teams winning and losing games, like where they did things right, where they did things wrong. And my goal with these videos is to give you as much information as I can in these quick reviews of each game to use moving forward to make money betting on the NRL for the rest of the season. So round 14 was a round of pretty much blowouts. 6 of the 8 games were decided by at least the 13 plus margin. In fact, 5 of the 6 games that were a 13 plus margin were also a 24 plus margin, and only 2 games decided by the 1 to 12 margin. Both those games decided by 4 points, with the Knights beating the Seagulls in Golden Point 26-22, and on Sunday the Panthers beating the Tigers 18-4. 7 of the 8 games went over the total points line, just the 1 game going under, which was the Tigers-Panthers game. That makes it now 59 games on the season have gone under, 49 have gone over. And if you've been watching the past few weeks, you would have seen us talking about how most weeks a lot of games are going under. When that happens, the betting companies just keep on lowering the total points line, and inevitably games need to start going over, and that number will even up. So we did have 7 of the 8 games go over. Majority of them only just went over the number. It was only most of the time up to a converted try difference between the total points line and the final score for the game. Home teams won 6 of the 8 games. Home teams covered 7 of the 8 games. So far this season, home teams are 60-48 against the spread. Sharks were the only home team to lose and also not cover the spread this weekend, losing to the Warriors 40 points to 10. Favorites won 6 of the 8 games. The underdogs who won outright were the Knights coming back to beat the Seagulls and the Warriors beating the Sharks. Favorites covered 5 of the 8 games. So far this season, underdogs are 60-48 against the spread. Tigers were the only underdog to cover the spread but not go on to win the game. The first game, we're going to look at Knights versus Seagulls. Newcastle winning this 26-22 thanks to a Kalen Ponga try in the 81st minute in Golden Point. The Knights were underdogs for this game, so they also covered the spread, and the game went over the total thanks to a 26-point second half by Newcastle. Newcastle have managed to win 2 of their last 3 games now and do have a 5-8 record on the season. And considering how bad they've looked on multiple occasions so far, I am definitely surprised they've still managed to win 5 games. It's largely on the back of their defense. This was just their second game to go over the total on the season. Manly continue their win-loss trend that's now been going for 7 weeks. Interestingly, over the last 4 weeks, they've lost to the Knights, who ranked 15th on the ladder going into this game, and also to the Eels, who ranked 16th when they played the Seagulls. But Manly have won against the 8th place Broncos when they faced them, and the 6th place Cowboys when they beat them. That's their last month. So losing against 2 bottom 3 teams and winning against 2 top 8 teams at the time when they played those sides. This game went over and it broke a trend of 7 straight Seagulls games going under the total. Overall, this game was a pretty incredible comeback by the Knights. They gave up 3 tries in the first half, were trailing 16-0. They were booed off by their home fans. I think it's happened once or twice previously this season, but I think this time really went to another level. And they responded in the second half. In fairness, Manly picked up an injury to Lehigh Hopewell at fullback in the first half, I think in the 5th minute. He got injured when trying to score a try. That took him off for the rest of the game. Tolu Kola was moved to fullback. And not so much in the first half, but particularly in the second half, the Seagulls were absolutely torched down their left edge. Every time Newcastle took the ball to the right, they were making easy meters, and probably go as far to say, had Hopewell not been injured and Kola was able to stay on that left edge, then the Seagulls would have won this game. Newcastle scored the first 3 tries of the second half. Fletcher Sharp, then Fletcher Hunt, and then James Schiller. That got it back to a 16-all game. Then they gave up one of the softest tries that you pretty much see to Tommy Talau, who just waltzed his way from 20 meters out straight through the middle and ran over under the post. And you thought when he scored that try, Manly are probably going to win now. But they got it back. Fletcher Sharp got his second. And then Dane Gagai was able to kick the conversion to tie it, went to golden point, and they scored the try through Kalen Ponga off the kick that was knocked down, and he was right there to take it and run away to score. Interestingly, over the past 4 weeks, Newcastle have gone 6 points scored, 25, 6, 26. So they're alternating between 1 try and 4 tries, basically. They got 5 in this game with the golden point and the few missed conversions. So the times that they've scored the 6 points have been against the statistically worse defensive sides. And the times that they've scored the 26 points have been against the better defensive sides. So similar to Manly, they're playing better against better opposition and worse against worse opposition. Both these teams are not showing up at 100% consistently and effectively just playing to the level of their opponent. Statistically in this game, Knights had 47% possession, less possession than their opponent for the 12th time in 13 games this season, but at least they didn't make 15 errors like we've generally come to expect from them, only the 11 in this game. They were minus 144 post-contact meters and conceded an equal season high 8 line breaks that Manly made. Only got 2 penalties, which was the least that they've received so far this season. Just Manly conceding 2 penalties, and only had 11 plays inside the 20-meter zone of the Seagulls, which shows how much they were able to generate long runs that turned into points and score those long-range tries. Had only scored 13 points across their past 4 games in the second half, but got the 26 here, which was enough for them to win the game. Disappointing loss by the Seagulls in terms of giving up a 16-point lead, and ultimately this loss meant Daly Cherry Evans getting dropped from the Queensland side. I think it was on the cards after game 1 of the State of Origin. He kind of, in the win against the Broncos, kept himself strongly in contention. But when a team is leading 16-0 against one of the worst attacking sides that can't generate points in majority of games, in that situation, generally, your halfback leads you in and wins games. I spoke about this in one of the members-only previews, how in that situation, Cherry Evans needed to lead the Seagulls with his kicking game, but too often, Luke Brooks was doing the goal kicking, and even on that play where Manly went for a field goal to try and win the game, they went straight off the rock to Cherry Evans, which was the telegraph play that everyone could see coming from an absolute mile away. The defense charged at him, and that was then forced to offload to Luke Brooks. I think that's where players can be a bit more creative in that situation as opposed to going to the obvious straight off the rock to the right. The defense sees that coming from a mile away, and whether they're offside or not doesn't really matter. Every player runs at them, and they need to use a bit more deception, that kind of thing. But regardless, this performance, I think, was the catalyst that ultimately made Cherry Evans get dropped from the Queensland team. Manly have conceded, in terms of their recent form, 5 tries, 1 try, 5 tries, 1 try, and then 5 tries again in this game across those past 5. That means they're due to give up just a 1 try next week against the Titans if that trend is to continue. They improved their attacking numbers with 8 line breaks and 32 tackle breaks, and that's a positive considering Newcastle are one of the better defensive sides, but they did miss 37 tackles, which was their highest that they've missed since round 2 against the Warriors. Have conceded only just 32 plays inside their 20-meter zone across their past 3 games, 11, 11, and 10. So they're not giving up good field position to opponents for the most part. So they just need to be able to stop those long-range tries. Potentially, if they were to concede less long-range tries, it would give teams more possession close to line, but they're still extremely low numbers. Pretty obvious, but their worst second half performance of the season at minus 20 points. Moving forward, Newcastle have a 9-day rest before they'll play the Roosters, who are off the bye, and Seagulls will play the Titans, as I just mentioned, on Friday night in what is an important game for them. The first game on Friday night, the Storm versus the Cowboys, Melbourne winning 38-14. Storm, as favourites here, covered the spread and the game went over the total points line. Storm made it back-to-back wins for the first time since round 5 and 6 this season. Still only trailed at half-time as well once this year. They led 18-4 in this game. Recently, 3 of their last 4 games have gone over the total. Cowboys struggling again, losing 3 of their last 5, plus a draw in there as well. So there's 1 win in their last 5 matches, and that win was against the West Tigers. Have failed to cover their last 3, and also 5 of their last 6 games have gone over the total. Storm were pretty much always in control of this game. They got an early try through Eli Katoa in the 4th minute. That was backed up by another try to Jerome Hughes. That got the Storm out to an early lead. Jackson Paulo scored for the Cowboys to get them on the board. That was their only points in the first half. The try right on halftime where Jerome Hughes got his second, that pushed that margin out where it was now going to take the Cowboys to score the first try definitely in the second half. However, down 18-4, Nick Meaney scored right after halftime, which stretched that margin out to 24 points to 4. It was a little bit of a somewhat comeback or try to come back by the Cowboys, scoring 2 quick tries, but ultimately not enough when you're trailing by 20 points against Melbourne in Melbourne. You pretty much have to play perfect football to even get back into the contest, and even then it's near impossible to win. Melbourne running out 24-point winners in the end. Storm have scored at least 5 tries, so 5 or more in each of their last 4 games. Were plus 150 post-contact meters here at 668. Kept the Cowboys to 4 points in the first half and have now kept an opponent to 6 or less in 6 of their last 12 games. So going at 50%. Most of their stats in this game were similar to what their season average is. Did concede 6 line breaks though, which is the most they've conceded in their past 8 games. And also have benefited. So this game, the Cowboys made 16 errors. Last week, the Titans made 15 errors against them. Melbourne have definitely been benefiting from teams making a lot of mistakes against them, and their opponents in the future can't afford to continue on doing that, as it makes it even harder to beat that side. Cowboys have now conceded 30 points on average across their past 5 games, all of them at least 24 points conceded. And they've also conceded 18 or more in the first half in 4 of their past 6 games. The only exceptions to that were the Seagulls and Tigers games. They lost the post-contact meters battle for the 4th straight game and made an equal season high 16 errors and only completed at 61%. This was the other thing I wanted to get to. Minus 20 differential between the team's completion rate. You can't go into Melbourne and beat the Storm with a 61% completion rate. They've only completed over the 80%, the Cowboys, in 2 of 12 games this season. Missed 42 tackles as well, which they've done in 42 or more in 3 of their last 4 games. They lost the second half for the 3rd straight game, which is concerning considering early on in the year they won 7 straight second halves between rounds 3 and 10. So have dropped off late in the games in recent times. Melbourne have the bye this week for the week prior to Origin. Then we'll play the Rabbitohs. Cowboys have a tricky matchup against the Dolphins this week, who are off a big win, which is the next game we'll get to, as they also played on the Friday night, beating the Dragons 56-6 at Suncorp Stadium. Dolphins, as favourites, covered the spread, and the game obviously went over the total, the Dolphins covering it themselves. They made it back-to-back wins with big margins. Last week, or prior to their bye, beating the Bulldogs by 36 points, and now beating the Dragons by 50 points. They had a bye in between them. They're now at 6-7 on the season with some winnable games coming up. They've covered 3 of their last 4, and also 5 of their last 7 games have gone over the total. Dragons had won 2 straight leading in, but were absolutely blown off the park here early on, trailing 28-2 at halftime. They've trailed at halftime in 5 of their past 6 games, with Newcastle being the only exception. 4 of their past 6 games have gone over the total points line. Massive win here by the Dolphins. This was their first 50-point winning margin in the history of the club. They ran in 10 tries to 1, including the first 9 tries of the game. 9 tries coming up to the 58th minute before Valentine Holmes scored the only try for the Dragons. Tabuai Fido, Herbie Farnworth, Jermaine Asako, and Lem all getting doubles. Valentine Holmes scoring the only try for the Dragons on the left wing late, which he was moved to replacing Tuipulotu. Dolphins, prior to their bye, they had a season high 44 points that they scored against the Bulldogs, and they've increased it this week with 56 points. They've outscored their opponents 100-14 across those 2 games. 17-2 tries scored, are also 58-4 in the second halves across those 2 games. Had plus 96 runs. The statistical difference between these 2 sides is massive in this game. So firstly, 60% possession, completed at 86%, 2,200 run meters to 1,100, and 233 runs to 137. massive differences. Plus 235 post-contact meters, 8 line breaks to 3. The 8 line breaks was a season high, and only made 7 errors. So not only they're making lots of meters, making lots of line breaks, they weren't making mistakes as well. Dolphins have had 10 or less errors made in 8 of their last 10 games. The Dragons, this was their second biggest loss in the history of the club. Only worse than this was back against the Storm in the year 2000, where they lost 17 points to 10. They only scored a penalty goal in the first half, which was in the second minute. From there, it was all Dolphins. This was a game where they were kept to 4 or less points in the first half, which has happened in 3 of their last 4 games. The 21 tackle breaks that they made, or 22 tackle breaks, was a season low. And even though they conceded 56 points, they only missed 29 tackles, which is only slightly above their average. Have given up less than 48 meters per point to the opposition in 3 of their last 6 games. So a few of those games, they've been very easy to score against. And also, when teams are making big meters, they need to score a lot of points in order to have a low meters per point rating. And the Dolphins were able to do that in this game, and that's been a trend that's emerged recently for the Dragons. Dolphins travel up to North Queensland to play the Cowboys, and the Dragons are on the road again to play the Sharks, and then will have their third and final bye of the season. Speaking of the Sharks, they made it back-to-back losses, losing to the Warriors 40-10. The Warriors were underdogs here, so also covered the spread, and the game went over the total points line. Sharks back-to-back losses as favourites after winning back-to-back games as underdogs prior to that against the Storm and Seagulls. Their last 3 games have gone over the total. Warriors last week equaled their season high score at 36. This week set a new top score with 40 points and also kept opponents to 10 points, which is the second best result they've had this season. A lot of the time, they've been conceding like 12, 14, 16 points. So they kept the Sharks here to 10, which all of that came in the first half. They've led or tied at halftime the Warriors in each of their last 8 games. Overall, the first half was a really close contest. It was 12-10 at halftime. Warriors scored the first 2 tries. Sharks responded with 2 tries down their left edge and only trailed by 2 at halftime. And Warriors hadn't really been a good second half team. Like, a lot of their second half margins were really close, like 2 points, 1 point, 4 points, really little between them and their opposition in second halves. And you out of 12-10 scoreline, you probably expected this game to come down to the wire. It was going to be 1 try either way that separated the 2 teams. But James Fisher-Harris ran in a pretty soft try straight after halftime, and the barrage continued from then. Warriors running in 5 tries, all unanswered, and gave the Sharks their second consecutive game where they've conceded 40 points or more. Statistically, like, the Sharks still put up good numbers, aside from the leaking 40 points and only scoring 10 themselves. They had 28 plays inside the Warriors' 20-meter zone, completed at 85%, only made 7 errors, and run meters were fairly even. Like, Warriors had a little bit of an edge, 1,700 to 1,500, so almost a 200 differential. That's fairly significant, but not monumental. We're not talking about 400 or 500 run meters difference, which you'd expect with this kind of score. Line breaks were even at 5 each. Sharks even had 6 set restarts to 1 in their favor. Just couldn't match it with the Warriors in the second half. And also, Sharks have lost the second half for the 3rd straight game. Warriors, this was their best second half performance of the season and the second time they've kept an opponent scoreless in the second half. Going back to the point that I made earlier, 5 of their past 6 second halves leading into this. Opponents have needed over 100 meters per point in 4 of the last 5 games against the Warriors. Their defense numbers are looking really, really good, and what you need going into finals, so they're setting themselves up well. Interesting tactics for them the past couple of weeks. They've made 15, so in their kicking game, 15 bombs to 1 grubber across those 2 games. Now, they haven't been having too many plays inside the 20-meter zone. This matchup, they only had 9 plays, not needing them to score points. So that contributes a little bit, but still a pretty major discrepancy. I definitely don't disagree with the strategy, that's for sure. I think there's a lot more opportunity that can come from high kicks as opposed to grubbers in terms of your kicking game. The ball can deflect, the winger can knock on in trying to catch the kick, whereas a grubber, a lot of the time, unless the fullback or the winger are back to cover and you have a player chasing through, a lot of the time it results in a dropout, best case scenario. If you don't kick it dead, which happens quite a lot, And with a dropout nowadays, it's almost 50-50 chance. Some teams even are better than a 50% chance of getting the ball back from that dropout. So I think the tactic the Warriors are implementing here works well. It'll continue to work well against teams that don't have wingers that are safe under the high ball. One other thing I noticed with the Warriors is they're starting to give up a lot more ruck infringements in the 6-agains. They've given up more 6-again calls and set restarts than their opponent in 7 of their last 10 games, and there's also a tie in there. So they've only received more set restarts than their opponent in 2 of their last 10 games. Moving forward, the Sharks will play their local rival, the Dragons, this week, and then have a trip up to Brisbane to face the Broncos. Sharks are also on a 5-day turnaround playing the Dragons this week. This will be for the 3rd time this season. They have a 1-1 record. They lost to the Raiders in a game that they basically had won until the final play of the game, and then they beat the Parramatta Eels in their other game on a 5-day turnaround. Warriors go on the bye in a really well position and then have a home game against the Panthers following that. Broncos 44-14 over the Gold Coast Titans. Broncos as favourites covered the spread. We expect Broncos to be favourites every week, but they haven't been covering. This game they did, and it obviously went over the total. Didn't get there by too much. The total is in the 50s for this game. Brisbane broke a 4-game losing and non-cover streak. The 4th time this season they've scored 40-plus points. Also, after scoring to 6 last week against a team who then gave up 26 to the Knights, they then come out and score 44, which was an equal second season high point scored for them. Titans have lost 3 straight in 8 of their last 9 games, have trailed at halftime in each of the last 5, and also 4 of their last 6 games have gone over the total. Broncos were on early in this game. I did talk about this in the preview that with it being Reynolds' 300th, with the pressure on the team, they have an easy opponent and also a rival opponent who had been beating up on them recently. Expect the Broncos to come out strongly. They score through Shibasaki on the first set of 6. They make a break down the right edge, switch it to the left, and go over for a pretty easy try. And the rest of the first half was all Broncos. They ran in 5 tries that led 28-0 at halftime and had the game fully in their control. Both teams scored 3 tries in the second half. Broncos ended up winning by 30 points. They led by 28 at halftime, but still won the second half by 2 points. And the reason why I mention this is the Broncos had previously lost 10 of 11 second halves. And they only got this one by 2, but were in a winnable, had the game won. Conceded just 14 total points, which was the lowest they've conceded since round 4, which also happened to be against another Queensland side in the Redcliffe Dolphins. They completed at 79% in this game, but did make more errors than their opponent for the 5th straight time, which that's not major. There's a 4 differential, not super major. Sometimes errors are okay if you're scoring points. The issue is making errors and not scoring points, because sometimes you have to take risks in order to create attacking opportunities, make offloads, sometimes force them when they're not there. When they come off, it can result in line breaks and tries. When they don't, then you make mistakes. So you obviously don't want to have an extremely low error count and not be able to score, but you want to have that balance, if you get what I'm saying. Titans, this was the 2nd time this season they were kept scoreless in the first half, and they've been kept to 8 or less in the first half in 4 of their last 5 games. Also lost the second half again, which they've done in 8 of their last 9. Keep that in mind with the Broncos as well. They did beat a side who's also poor in the second half, and it was only a 2-point margin. Had less possession for the 8th time in the last 9 games, and have run for less meters than their opponent in 9 of the last 10 games, I want to mention this because this is definitely concerning, is Titans aren't making enough meters to generate good field position, good attack, and they're also giving up meters as well. And when you look at their side, they have Fodawaker and Tino, who is the Queensland front row. And if you go back to State of Origin Game 1, Queensland were hammered in the middle of the field to just constantly set up good field position on the New South Wales side. So that's concerning going forward, not only for the Titans, but also the Queensland side. Titans missed 39 tackles, something they've consistently been doing, missing around that 40 mark this year. Broncos have the bye this week, and then we'll play the Sharks at home. Titans will play on Friday night against the Seagulls at home, but will be on a 2-day rest disadvantage considering the Seagulls played on the Thursday night and they played on Saturday. First game on Sunday, the Raiders winning 36-12 over the Rabbitohs at home. Josh Papali, in his record-breaking game for the Raiders, scored 2 tries, kicked a conversion as well. It's one of those feel-good games, particularly if you're a Raiders fan. They are favourites. They covered the spread. The game went over the total. This was Canberra's 4th straight win, and they're really well positioned, 11-3, going into their first bye of the season. They still have 3 byes in hand going forward, and we're in the second half of the year. They also have a very comfortable run home. When you look at the teams that they still have to play, I'll go through that with you guys in a second. They're currently around $8 for the premiership. It's really hard to see Canberra not being in the top 4 and getting a double chance here, so they should make it through to, if they hold form, a prelim final, I would expect at worst. 4 of their last 5 games have gone over the total, and they've covered the spread in 9 of the last 10. This is your side that has absolutely beaten the bookies' expectation of them this season. They're $67 for the premiership at the start of the year. Second favourite for the Wooden Spoon. They cleared their season win line with the win last week, so they needed 10 wins, already at 11. That's also why they're constantly covering the spread. Rabbitohs have now lost 6 of their last 8 games, with just wins over the Broncos and Tigers. Their first 11 games went under. Now their last 2 games have gone over. The ties turned a little bit. They've given up 36 points in back-to-back weeks, which is both equal season highs. South Sydney scored the first 2 tries. Colin Matangi scored, and then Alex Johnston scored, as we expected. That was in the 14th minute. Rabbitohs with a penalty goal in there as well in the 9th minute between the 2 tries. Put them out to a 12-0 lead. Ethan Strange scored just before halftime, brought it back to 6-12. But the second half was all Canberra, scoring 5 unanswered tries. Made it 36 straight points since the Alex Johnston try when the Rabbitohs were up 12-0. 24-point margin. Raiders made a second half comeback for the back-to-back weeks. They did it last time against the Roosters. Did it again here. They've scored 8 or less in their last 3 first halves, but have scored 22 or more in 3 of their last 4 second halves. The 30-0 second half was an equal best and the exact same scoreline they had earlier in the season against the Dolphins in round number 8. They had 54% possession, and that makes it 8 of their last 9 games where they've had more ball than their opponent. They continue to dominate the field position too, on the back of their good completion rate and comprehensively beating their opponent in meters gained. The past 2 weeks, they've had 87-31 plays inside the opponent's 20-meter zone, and also break close to 40 tackles a game. This game they had 37. They're consistently pushing that 40 mark. And also, whilst they're breaking close to 40 tackles, they're consistently missing under 30. So a good differential between the two. Rabbitohs played a decent first half here, but fell right away in the second half. They've been outscored 52-18 in the past 2 weeks in second halves. They've had less line breaks than their opponent in their last 9 games. 27-63 line breaks across those 9 games. Differential of 36, and they have still had less run meters than their opponent in every single game this season. Raiders made the least errors of anyone against the Rabbitohs this season, so they weren't able to capitalize on an opponent making mistakes either. Raiders have the bye, and when I talk about the Raiders and their easy run home, after the bye, they'll play, well, in no particular order, because I'm going to go through the double ups. They have the Tigers twice, the Knights twice, the Dragons twice, the Seagulls and Eels. Then the only other 2 games in terms of teams that I'd consider in form right now are against the Dolphins and Penrith Panthers. 8 of those 10 games that they have to play as well are on 7 or more day turnarounds. 2 of them are a 6-day turnaround, the rest are 7+. So not only they have one of the easiest runs of opponents, they already have 11 wins, is the most of any team. They have 3 byes and good breaks in between games. They're not forced to do quick turnarounds or anything like that. That's why I say the Raiders have to be there, entrenched in the top 4 come the end of the season. For the Rabbitohs, it doesn't get any easier. They'll play the Bulldogs, Storm and Dolphins on the next 3 weeks. Not only they've lost 6 of their last 8, they have 3 incredibly tough games coming up, but potentially in danger of losing 9 of 11 games unless they dramatically turn around. It's going to be very difficult for them to get scoring chances against these teams, as well as probably all 3 of them are going to completely dominate them in the meters battle in the middle, and it's from there it's going to be really tough for South Sydney. Tigers, that's the Panthers. Penrith winning 18-14. Panthers won as a favourite, but with the big spread, the Tigers covered, and the game went under the total pretty comfortably. Tigers, this was their 4th straight loss, but have covered in their past 2 games. Panthers made it back-to-back wins for the first time this season. We're at round 14, so round 13, 14. They finally get back-to-back wins. They've failed to cover the spread, though, in 3 of their past 4. Also, their last 3 and 8 of their last 10 games have gone under the total. This was a really good contest, and from a competitive perspective, very similar to the Knights-Seagulls game. But I think this one was one where Penrith were pretty much in control, and you always felt like Penrith were going to win this game, but it was always somewhat in the balance. Like, Tigers didn't really drop away at any stage, and when the Panthers got Thomas Jenkins' 3rd try, Tigers quickly responded and got it back under a try margin. Early on in this game, Thomas Jenkins scored first. He was our try scorer for the Panthers. He ended up with 3, targeting that left edge. If the Tigers can clean up their right edge defense, they would definitely challenge a lot more sides because their left edge defense is really good. But teams with strong left edge attacks can score points against them. Starfatua scoring for the Tigers quickly after that, and then Taruva scored. This try right on halftime was a crucial one that got the score back to level. Otherwise, the Tigers were going into halftime with a 4-point lead. But when Thomas Jenkins scored, it was converted, and they also got the penalty goal in there. It was a 8-point margin. Abdui missed the conversion of Skelton's try, but it was still in the balance right to line, but Penrith able to hold on by 4 points and survive that final 10 minutes. Tigers were kept to 10 in the first half, which makes it 6 of the last 7 games where they've failed to score over 10 points. So they're not really able to put teams away or anything like that, or even establish a decent margin going into halftime. And they were kept to just 4 points here in the second half. That makes it, meaning they've kept to 8 or less in 4 of their last 5 games. They've also lost the second half in 6 of their past 7 matches. They won the penalty count in this game, which is something they haven't lost in terms of the penalty count in their last 9 games. There's been a couple of ties in there, but consistently winning the penalty count. Their last 9 games have either been 60 plus points scored of the 2 teams combined or under 38 points scored. Across those 9 games, they've had 5 with at least 60 points and 4 with 38 or less. The reason I bring this up is most of the time the total points line is in the 40s, and Tigers are either comprehensively clearing that number and going to the 60 plus, or they're going significantly under it. So it offers some good opportunities with alternate lines. They missed 39 tackles in this game, which means they've missed 39 plus in each of their last 5. Panthers completed at 87%, really good numbers. They had 86% completion rate last week, and their errors have progressively dropped throughout the year. So they're cleaning up, not making as many mistakes. It's helping them win more games. Their second half defense has been very strong. They've conceded 6 or less points in 4 of their last 5 games. Also had a season best, just 2 line breaks conceded. And the 7 that they made, 7 line breaks, was also an equal season high. West Tigers have the bye this week, and then they'll play the Canberra Raiders. Panthers also have a bye coming up, then a road trip over to New Zealand to play the Warriors. Their next 2 games are going to be very interesting. They've got the Warriors in New Zealand, and then come back to Australia on a 5-day turnaround to play the Canterbury Bulldogs. Speaking of the Bulldogs, they comfortably beat the Eels 30-12 on Monday. Bulldogs, as favourite, covered, and the game went over the total. Bulldogs bounced back from their second loss of the season. They were tied at half-time, but this was the first game not trailing across their past 4. 5 of their last 6 games also have gone over the total. This was the Eels' second loss in a row and also non-cover. This game just went over. It only went over by half a point. The line was 41.5. And broke a run of 5 straight unders in Eels games. A bit of an interesting start to this one. The first 2 tries through Matt Burton and Mitchell Moses were both intercept tries. Matt Burton off the scrum came around the side and grabbed the pass off the scrum. There was questions if he was onside or not, all those kind of things that can come up. Mitch Moses getting the intercept on the right edge and running, I think, around 80 meters to 90 meters to score. Both teams then scored a try each through the first half to make it 12-12 at halftime. The Eels capitalising with this Dylan Walker try whilst William Kikau was in the sin bin. But they couldn't take any opportunities in the first 5 minutes of the second half, whilst the Bulldogs were still down to 12 players on the field. And the rest of the second half was all Bulldogs. They scored 3 unanswered tries. Lachlan Galvin scoring in his first game for the Bulldogs, and they won the game by 18 points. Bulldogs had 60% possession in this game, so pretty dominant on a 90% completion rate. To be honest, the fact they only won by 18, Eels are lucky they didn't lose this game by more when you look at some of the differentials in the stats, which we'll go through in a second. Do want to mention that last game, the Bulldogs had 0 line breaks against the Dolphins prior to their bye and had 6 this week, 1 more than their season average, and they also broke 38 tackles, which is 9 above their average. Dominated possession and meters gained, only missed 26 tackles, considering it's generally always 32 plus for them. And they kept the Eels scoreless in the second half, which was the 5th time they've done that this season. The Eels conceded 30 points for just the second time in their last 11 games, missing the 38 tackles, making 16 errors, really both proving costly. The number of errors plus being down 6-3 in the penalty count and 6-3 in the set restart count. Those all combined left the Eels with just 40% possession. They had 81 less runs, 151 to 232, 950 less meters gained, also gave up over 700 post-contact meters for the second time this season. Last time they did that was against Canberra. Only had 6 plays inside the Bulldogs' 20-meter zone compared to the 47 plays the Bulldogs had and were pretty much camped on the Eels try line for a lot of this game. There was 18 points in the second half, and all of those coming from the Bulldogs. The reason I mention this, the first 10 games of the season, every Parramatta game had 22 or more points scored in the second half. Their last 3 games have each had 18 or less second half total points scored. Bulldogs will verse the Rabbitohs on Sunday afternoon and then have their final bye of the season. Eels have the bye this week and then will play the Titans at home. So that's the wrap of round number 14. Looking at the ladder as it currently stands, Bulldogs still sit a game clear of the Raiders, who have 2 byes still in hand. They're on 22 points with 11 wins. Warriors also on 22 points with 10 wins. Then the Storm are on 20 competition points with 8 wins from 12 games, in a similar boat to the Bulldogs, only having played the 12 games so far. Then there's a gap of 2 games down to the Sharks, who still sit in 5th position, half a game clear of the Cowboys, who are half a game clear of the Dolphins, which starts a run of 6 teams all on 14 competition points. Dolphins, Broncos, Seagulls, Roosters, Dragons, Rabbitohs, then half a game to the Panthers, then half a game to the Tigers and Knights. Right now, there's only 2 wins separating 5th and 15th on the ladder. From this stage of the season, every game really starts to become a lot more important, and we're going to see some major ladder fluctuations. Teams well down can move up significantly just by winning 1 game. So it sets up for a very interesting run right through to the finals. Looking at the games next week, the Sharks play the Dragons on Thursday night. Friday night, just a 1-game Titans versus Seagulls. Saturday, we've got 2 games in the Knights versus Roosters and Cowboys versus Dolphins. And then on Sunday, Rabbitohs versus Bulldogs. Keep in mind the games for this week, all Origin rep players are going to be out of their regular teams. So there'll be a few teams that'll be affected by that. You don't have the Storm in action, but you do have the Roosters. Penrith aren't playing either. Some of those sides that are dramatically affected. Broncos have the bye this week as well. So it's not as major as we saw in quite a few games going into State of Origin Game 1, but it's still something that you definitely need to keep in mind when analysing these games. We'll be posting a preview going through the betting trends for each of these matchups later in the week, so stay tuned for that video. Make sure you subscribe, you have notifications on so you get that video as soon as it's posted. Same as the try scorer video, we're running through the try scorers for each of these games in that preview coming up later in the week as well, before the Sharks-Dragons game on Thursday. The try scorer video will be posted on Thursday. So yeah, I'm looking forward to running through that. Everything I do in InvestBet and with my own betting is all based on stats. If I didn't do that, then I wouldn't have been able to bet full time for over a decade. So that's why I created this channel, to share with you guys some of the strategies I use when analyzing games and how you can use statistics and analytics to analyze these team performances in order to make sure that the bets that you're putting on are the best bets that you can be making. And I want to help make sure that everyone betting on not just the NRL, but sports and anything you're betting on, there is ways that you can make sure that you don't lose money betting. And this doesn't come down to whether you win a bet or lose a bet. It comes back to your overall strategy. I'm going to be recording a video really soon that's going to break down an exact strategy you can use to make sure that you never lose money from the betting companies. There's just one thing you need to do first. Once you achieve that and hit that goal, you can bet for as long as you want to bet for the rest of your life if you want to, and never be losing your own money to the betting side. So really excited to run through that strategy with you guys. That'll be a video that you really want to watch if you're serious about making money from your betting accounts and being able to withdraw cash consistently, and most importantly, not lose money to these betting sites. Thanks guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, gave you some good insights into these teams' performances, how they're traveling. I'll see you guys in the next video.